All right, everybody, it's been a little bit, but we're back today. We're gonna be replacing the front hub / wheel bearing on this 2010 Altima. Gonna start out by loosening up the lugs on this front wheel before we jack it off the ground, and then we'll take the wheel off and go from there. So now that the wheel's off, it's time to get rid of the ABS sensor. So back here, looks like the last person who worked on this just put zip ties. So I'm just gonna cut these zip ties, take this off, that way we don't damage it when we're taking all this apart. Usually this should come right out, but in my case I had to get some pliers and kind of pry it out of this hole, but I just kind of wiggle it out real gentle and it came right out. Next, what we gotta do is we gotta get rid of these, take these bolts out on the caliper. These are 14 mil, just get rid of this one and right here. I'm just gonna try to get these off with the breaker bar. Hopefully they're not too bad. That one's pretty easy. Let's get the one here at the bottom. Off. I want to be careful with this brake line here. There we go. And I'll just hang this up on the strut here, just using a zip tie. Now, so in order to take the rest of this caliper off, we just gotta get rid of these two bolts here. This one on this one. It is a 22 mil, and I'm using a breaker bar because I'm guessing these might be a little bit tough to get off. So ended up needing to use the impact wrench I got over here because that breaker bar, at least when you got jacked up on the ground here, it was not easy to do. So ended up getting these off. Now, next thing to do is we're just gonna slide this off. Thankfully, it's already loosened. Didn't have to do much maneuvering. Thankfully for this. Put this to the side. And now what we need to do is get these bolts. See that one right there and this one here. And there's one, you can see it, up here, and there's one right over here that we need to get out. So I'm just gonna use a 17 mil shallow socket and this little swivel, and should be able to get these out pretty easily. Actually, wasn't having much luck with the swivel socket, so I just ended up using a 17 mil long socket on this breaker bar, and I was able to get the bottom two off, or at least loosened up. And then I'll just finish them off with the ratchet and wrench. Just about got the bottom two out. There we go. Now for the top ones. Swivel socket ended up not being useful here either, so I was able to just fit, again, same thing. 17 mil long socket and this I guess deep socket and this breaker bar. I was able to get kind of loose, and I'll just finish it off with ratcheting. And there we go. All right, so now we got all these 4 bolts out the back. You can see this is where they were, for these holes here. Now it's time to get this nut off, so we just gotta get this pin out of here. So what I'm gonna do is just get this flathead pry under here. Start it going up. Same with the bottom. Thankfully this one's not too rusted, so I'm not gonna have to do anything too crazy to get out of here. If it's rusted, sometimes you gotta drill through or do something like that in order to get it out. Otherwise, you're not gonna have much luck. All right. Oh man. Maybe it'll be harder than I thought it was gonna be. There we go. Maybe. Just so close. There we go. Use that. All right, so now I'm gonna get this last nut off of here. And I'm gonna use it's a 1¼ inch deep socket. You can use shallow too, but that's just what I got. Oh man. So I gotta use a breaker bar. End up needing this. Should come out pretty easy after you get it initially. All right, well, now I gotta get this off. My axle's pretty loose. If it's not, you can put the nut back on, kind of hit the nut a little bit till it's loose. So now I gotta get this hub off. I'm just gonna hit it. So it took some maneuvering with a little bit heavier of a hammer. Definitely recommend using this. It makes it a lot easier. I got it loose here. Let's push the axle through the middle. And there you go, just like that. This thing is making a ton of noise on the road, and I'm sure it hasn't played, and you need to check about that. But get this sucker out of here, get the new one in. All right, so I cleaned off the axle a little bit with some brake clean. I'm looking a lot better now. So next, what I'm gonna do is obviously put on the new hub and bearing. Before I do that though, I'm gonna put a little bit of grease on this axle since I just cleaned it off. That way, just avoid any type of seizing of anything in the future if I ever have to get back in here. Hopefully not, but you never know. Not too much, just a little bit to make sure it doesn't seize up or anything like that, because it was looking pretty rusty. I took it off. Cool. So don't forget to put the dust shield back on. Slide her back in. This is why it's good to put it up on the actual jack. You want to make sure to get started by hand, and that way you don't strip it out. I went ahead and I tightened the rest of the bolts in the back of the hub all the way in, so you can see you want to make sure that the bolts are either flush or like a little bit past, you know, towards the outside of the vehicle, past flush with the new hub. That way you make sure it's fully seated, and obviously, you know, you want this to be seated in there too. So I just had to go around slowly around each fork. Same with the bottom, just making sure that the bolts were coming through and they were flush with the new hub. That way there's no wiggling and you don't have your wheel falling off when you're in the middle of the road. Now what you got to do is just keep tightening them, but you want to torque them down to 65 foot-pounds. I don't have a torque wrench, so I'm just going to use the hand-o-meter and see what we can get done here. Once you got everything torqued down, always again, you want these to be down to 65 foot-pounds. Now we're going to slide this back on. Just tighten it by hand until you get to as far as you can go. And again, torque wrench is good here. You're going to torque this sucker down to 129 foot-pounds. So I'm going to get that done and I'll come back with the next step. Now all we gotta do is put the safety pin back in here, slide it in there, get your something done. I need to squeeze these together a little bit better here. Just squeeze it together a little bit better with the needle nose, went in pretty easily. Now I'm just gonna do kind of what I did to get it off, which is just put this flathead in here. Maybe. And then bend these out. Get them started. Hard to do with one hand. And get the needle nose again. And just bend her back. Same with the other one. Just bend it back. So I bend it back most of the way with the pliers. Now I'm going to use the hammer and just lightly tap it. Make sure you're not hitting any of the threads on these studs or on the axle. But you just want to get this slowly bent back. Just like that. Same with the other side. Should be good. I guess we'll find out in a second here. Time to put this caliper back on. You want to make sure that these suckers are actually moving in here. You should be able to press on them and they should move back and forward. If they can't really move a lot, try pulling them out of the boots. Make sure not to tear these boots because that can cause it to seize up when you go back on the road. That would not be good. And re-grease these guys if they need it. If not, they probably do. But if not, you can just put them back in. Make sure they're definitely lubed up and moving. So now we're just going to stick this guy back on. Now just hand tighten these bolts back in as much as you can. Make sure these brake pads don't come out of place. If they do, make sure it goes back where it's supposed to. All right, so now I'm just gonna stick the rotor back on. Just like that, nice and easy. And now, gonna put the caliper on. So you wanna make sure that the brake pads are where they should be, because the springs will kick them out of place pretty easily. Last thing you want is for these to be out of alignment and then your brakes don't work. That would not be good. So once it's in there, it's gonna come back. And again, make sure the brake pads stay where they're supposed to be. And put these bolts in behind it. And hand tighten them as much as you can. It should go in nice and easy. These guys go back here. I got these hand tightened all the way in to where I need a wrench to finish it off, and we're just going to tighten them down, torque them down to 98 foot-pounds. So again, I don't have a torque wrench, so that feels about right. They're definitely pretty hard to get off. So keep that in mind when you're putting them back on. You don't want these coming off when you're trying to brake. Okay. All right, so now that we got the caliper bracket on, I gotta put the rest of the piston on. Make sure that you don't tangle up this hose as we're doing it. You probably need to push in the brake pads in order to get this guy to fit. Then you just get these bolts, put them back in. Again, make sure you're hand tightening for the first part. That way when you go to tighten them down, you're not stripping anything out. All you gotta do, torque these guys down just to 20 foot-pounds. It's 14 mil. That works. Now, last thing you do before you put the wheel back on, get your ABS sensor that hopefully you remember to take out, and stick them right back in. And if you have the bolt, obviously put it back in there, but in my case, I had to use zip ties, so I'm gonna do that right now. Now I just gotta put the wheel back on, and what I like to do, especially with these tiny lug nuts, is just to stick them in the socket, and then start to tighten them using the socket. That way you're not risking stripping them or anything like that. That way it just threads on nice and easy. I'll just do that with all of them. All right, so now I got all of them hand tightened on. I'm just gonna get my impact wrench. Just kind of torque it on a little bit. Cool. Now we're ready to lower the vehicle, and then do the final torquing, and we'll be good to go. All right, now car's back on the ground. I'm just gonna torque all these down. 83 foot-pounds. I don't quite have a torque wrench, but this is good enough. She's good to go. Thanks for watching.